Only mode.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Christian Gustafsson, and I will be joined presently by Miss Catherine T, and I'm here to talk to you about the various versions of the MA Intelligence and Security Studies that we teach here at Brunel. I'll cover all sorts of things from the material we teach on the course, how it's taught, the various modes of study you can follow. Catherine will hopefully give you a little bit of the flavor of what the life is like being an MA student on the course, and then I think we have an opportunity and a mechanism by which we can take your questions. Right, so the first thing is BSIS. BSIS is the Brunel Center for Intelligence and Security Studies, and that's the overarching sort of studies interdepartmental research center which provides the staff that run the MA. So who are we? There's currently 3 of us, going up to 4 of us, core in the Department of Politics and History, and we have other members of staff from engineering, computing and design, law, and economics. And we all do scholarship which in some way touches on intelligence, and that ranges from the policy and social science end to the sort of fully interdisciplinary, so bringing in the those members from the other departments, so everything from, again, science and engineering to law. We do postgraduate education, so the MA that you're here to learn about, but we also have a bunch of PhD students, some of whom come from having done the MA and some of whom come from elsewhere. Also, we do a lot of consultancy and professional practice development. We've just come back from doing a course in one of the Baltic states to their security service. We do courses for various different police and security organizations in the Gulf Cooperation Council states and for the European Union for their intelligence center, and public information and education. So we do media stuff and op-eds, and you can see some of the pictures around the screen there on things we've done. So various media appearances to the books that Professor Davies and myself have published. So we get around. I've now, by the way, been joined, you may have heard the noise of her coming in the room, Miss Catherine T, who's got a few slides on here as well to speak about. Right, what's the MA for? The MA is pitched certainly at those who want to work in the intelligence or security sector or already do. And that works for both sides of the equation. If you're new to the field, it'll prepare you to be trained for the job. This isn't an intelligence school. It is a master's level education, which gives you the full sort of conceptual and intellectual background to work well in the field of intelligence. So it makes you more trainable. And we have feedback on that from a number of employers, which I'll touch on later. If you're already an intelligence professional or security professional, it'll help you understand better the things that you are already doing by giving you that depth of background understanding. So it's certainly aimed at professional practice, but it works for both people who are already practitioners and those who wish to be. Now, on the sliding scale of pure conceptual or theoretical education on one hand and pure practical training on the other hand, we probably sit sort of 70% on the theoretical conceptual and 30-40% on the practical and operationally minded. That scale can slide, but that's probably roughly a good guess on the kind of differences or where the material lies. Now, I don't expect you to understand this. This is what we call the murder calendar. And this is to give you an example of the number of assessments that our students have to do over the length of the course, which you can see is pretty spread out. And you can see the numbers are just the course codes, so don't worry about those. But there's something due from the students pretty much every week. I bring this up to say this is not your average master's course. We drive our students pretty hard on this, and we take pride in that, and the students actually, in the long run, take some pride from it. I'm looking at Catherine, who's got a kind of wry smile on her face. I'll let her speak to that, I think, in one of the upcoming slides here. But it's a hard course. We expect a lot from students. Now, the other thing to say is not all of those, you'll notice, are written work. There is various kinds of written work, but there's also briefings and group work and presentations. So there's a wide range of types of submission, but they come pretty thick and fast over the course. So if you want an easy ride, not your course to take. If you are prepared to dig your heels in and do the work, then great. We'll work you and we will make you improve. Okay, so this image here is something called PARC ACH, or Analysis of Competing Hypothesis, from the Palo Alto Research Center in the United States. It's a analytics tool that helps you determine subjective judgments of weight of evidence against various hypotheses. That's there to illustrate some of the kind of material that you'll get that's sort of more practically minded, but with a big theoretical backing. So, I talked about that sliding scale, sort of 60 to 70% conceptual, 30 to 40% practical. On the conceptual side, you get concepts of intelligence, organization, history, and understanding historiography that underlines what you can do with case studies, and epistemology, which is a big fancy word to say, how do you know what you know? On the more practical side, it's critical thinking stuff, it's presentation and briefing, it's use of structured analytical tools like the analysis of competing hypothesis spreadsheet you see there, and intelligence drafting and writing, which we will beat into your head with a nail gun. We've got, in terms of post-grad employment, actually I think I've kind of got a slide slightly out of sequence here, but I think it's on the next slide. I'll let Catherine speak about her experience on the material. But in terms of employment after, I don't have hard statistics for you, but it's pretty good. Just this week I've handed out to my students 3 job opportunities given to me directly and at first sight from different private intelligence and security companies. So I've got around here 4 companies that have hired our students recently. MS Risk does maritime security stuff. You're not working for MS Risk, are you? You didn't do that. Okay, sorry. Some who bring our students on as interns quite frequently. Digital Shadows is a startup which does cyber security. They hire a lot of our students. International SOS, travel security, which is also co-owned by Control Risks. They've hired our students. And a new add-on to the family is Anvil Group, again, who've started to give us first look at some of their new hires. Now, I'd say that the private sector is the stronger bit of the sector at the moment. A lot of our students do go into government work, though a lot do come from government work. I would say that it's the private sector that is the growth at the moment. They're the ones who are picking people up, and they're picking our students up in preference to other universities. I know that because they call me to tell me that. I'm not just making that up. There's a strong private sector out there. Probably 80% of our students are in employment in the field within a year after graduation, which is a pretty good record. So that's not just in employment, that's in employment in this field. Now I've got security groups up here, but I was speaking to a student from a few years ago. She works for HSBC doing counter-terror and terrorism finance for HSBC. got another student who does a very similar thing for another big bank. We've got students at various oil and gas, and also in sort of political risk rather than pure intelligence organizations. Yes. Okay. So now here's the outline of the material. So if you do the full-time residential course, this is what you get. Now the headline here is it's a pretty tightly engineered course. The students who are on the course don't have a lot of options. There aren't many students from outside the program who come into it. So students are pretty much with their peers. Class size is about 30 to 35 all the time, which is good for morale, which I'll get Catherine to speak to in a moment. So what it is 4 30-credit modules. First module is Intelligence Concepts, Theory, and Organization with Professor Davies. Second one is Case Studies and Intelligence. That's with me. Then you have an optional choice, which is Intelligence Analytics, which is a lot of Bayesian stuff. I'll talk more about that later. Or Counterintelligence. Now the Counterintelligence module will probably run this year. In subsequent years, it may become a cyber module. And then the last is one that I teach half of, and the team teaches the other half of, which is Threats and Analysis. And that contains what we call often the jewel in the crown, which is the analytical simulation exercise. The whole course is pretty much doing intelligence analysis. Now, if you're doing this course full-time, you do all 4 of those courses parallel. If you're doing it part-time, you'll do the first 2, so Intelligence Concepts, Theory, and Organization, and Case Studies in your first year, and in your second year, you'll do the option and the base. Now, this is Catherine. Say hello, introduce yourself, and add your pitch on the material for being a residential student.
Essentially, as Christian said, the material is very dense. If you're doing it full-time, it's a lot of work to do in a short period of time. But I feel like it's a bit different from undergrad in the sense that all the people who you're working with are all people who are passionate about the subject, who want to study, and you all kind of motivate each other to get through it. The 60% of the kind of academic work, the theoretical essays, etc., that tends to be kind of what feels like groundwork for the practical work, which is the base, which, although people consider as the hardest part, actually turned out to be the most enjoyable, especially when it came to the presenting at the very end, and kind of having that feel that you weren't just studying the course, you're actually doing something that is worthwhile, and you feel like you're actually doing intelligence analysis rather than just kind of studying how it's done. But yeah, be prepared. It's tough, but it's definitely worth it. And I think you end up surprising yourself as to the kind of amount of work that you can manage at one time. And the staff.
Well, staff, fine. I can be staff.
The lecturers and tutors have an open door policy. It's very much kind of communication and being able to come to them with any problems you have as well with work. It's not so much kind of like a teacher-student atmosphere. So although it's like I said, although it's hard, it's actually you just end up surprising yourself.
We did do this year a pretty solid outside speaker round. Catherine, did you want to add anything on what you thought about that?
Yeah, we had people kind of come in for like guest lectures who were either professionals or kind of veterans in the field, and it gave you a fresh perspective as to kind of what goes on outside of the course. So when you're done and when you're finished, it all kind of seems like you're just waiting for the end of the course and you're kind of waiting to get through it and get finished. And it gave you kind of that perspective of life kind of beyond studying and how that can be applied and how useful it's going to be. And the kind of things that are open to you. I mean, we had people who worked in private security, we had people who worked in banking. So, and it just kind of gave you that wide breadth of how this knowledge can be applied.
All right, cool. Now, this is now the distance learning version. which, as the title says here, it's the same as the residential course, but it's tailored for professionals. The idea is that it is for people who are in intelligence practice, who can't come take the residential course because of their professional employment. It is the same material as the residential or the on-campus course. It's taught via thematic video lectures, which is a fancy way of saying interactive presentations done via a virtual learning environment, which is another fancy way to say a kind of fancy website. It does require a 1 week on-campus residential block for each of the 2 years of study. Again, the first year mimics the on-campus part-time. So you do, in your first year, concepts and organization and intelligence case studies, and in your second year you do the optional module and the threats and analysis course. Then dissertation at the end, so the full course takes, I said 2.5 years, I think it's actually spot on 2 years. So September through to 2 Septembers hence. So that's slightly incorrect. It should read 2 years, I realize now. So that is the distance learning course. This year we run it for the first time. We've got 6 professionals ranging from Met Police to a private security professional from the US to some UK military personnel. That's the kind of characters that go on it. We can accept people on the course who don't have a first degree, presuming they have 5 years or more of professional experience in the field. And we judge that on a case-by-case basis. So if you're interested in doing it, you don't have a first degree, lay out your CV and we can consider it. There is also coming up, not yet quite advertised, a PG Cert in intelligence analysis. So not a full master's degree. It's a 9-month program aimed at upgrading working analysts, and it has 2 parallel compulsory modules, which are very similar to the modules that are taught already on the distance learning and on the residential course, so the analytics course and threats and analysis. And the picture here on the right is Bayesian thinking, which is a kind of analytics that you apply if you learn to do that. It also has a compulsory residential week, and it's 1/3 of the fees for the full-time MA. Whether you can, I believe we should have an ability to, for people who take that, to upgrade to do the full distance learning masters. But I can't promise you that just yet. I don't think it's reached full approval, but dollars to donuts, that's going to be the case. All right, back to Catherine in terms of what she reckons about the social side of doing the course.
I think the thing that I most enjoyed about the course, and I'm enjoying, sorry, about the course is the social aspect in terms of the kind of different people that you're mixing with. So it's not like undergrad where you're with people of the same age, you know, kind of similar background. You know, with this, I mean, I was probably one of only 4 British people, and so we had a complete mix of different experiences and people had different perspectives to offer, which I think was invaluable. I mean, there were people who I did politics for my undergraduate. There were people there who never even touched upon politics or international relations whatsoever. And I think that was for me the best part about kind of doing the lectures and doing the seminars and doing the presentations, is that you're gaining the perspective not just of kind of the lecturers and their breadth of knowledge, but also just seeing how other people kind of encounter the same information that you're encountering based on kind of the different things they've experienced in their life. And just generally having such a big mix of an international group was fab. And we all ended up getting on so well, kind of going to the pub, going out, organising meetings and stuff outside of uni, and we all just became quite a close-knit group, which, you know, at the end of the day, that kind of drives you forward, not only with your studying, but also kind of in getting as absolutely as much as you can from the course itself.
Brilliant. You'd think I was paying her, but I hasten to add I am not. And I'm not pointing any weapon at her, I'd like to add to the audience. Right, so I mean, the point I think Catherine and I will have got across here is this is a good course. Our students agree with that. You know, it's hard work. and we are not going to conceal the fact that it is a lot of hard work, but it generates good outcomes for the students who get a lot out of it and consistently come back to us after the fact and tell us about how they were using the things they learned on the course in theaters of operation in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, or in banks or private security companies. I have employers coming back to tell me about the value of having hired our students and then offering our students first look at new jobs. I have people coming to me looking to get my students as interns. I'm quite happy with the quality and rigor of the program, and quite keen to see new high-quality students on it. Now I think I've got time for some questions, and I've got our whiz-bang coming over here to show me the technology that I can use to answer your questions. So, all right, so you can type in questions if you've got any. I'll wait a couple minutes here for any questions to appear on the screen. While you're typing, actually, we do have one question here from one individual, Giovanni. And the question is, what will the most practical part of this MA be? I believe I've mostly answered that. To underline it, each of the modules has a kind of practical aspect to it. There are lots of in-class exercises and briefings. The module which loads the most practical things into it is the base module, the threats and analysis module. But even in the history case studies course, every student has to do a 15-minute class presentation and take questions. So there are practical skills there in preparing a good audiovisual presentation and delivering it in an effective way. And in fact, one of the things we do to underline that is the students peer review each other. So the main critiques for students doing their in-class presentations are the other students. And that it is remarkable to me as a lecturer how constructive and helpful those student feedback comments are. But I think the students who are doing the feedback, who are doing the critiques, are learning a lot about it themselves. So we actually get very informed, very helpful commentary. So all the courses have practical work on it. The most practical module is threats and analysis, but we spread it around. Now we've got David here who said thanks. And how are the groups organized? Groups are organized effectively by a bit of social engineering on our part. So when you're doing into the analytical teams for base, and yes, sorry, Giovanni popped up another question of official simulations. Yes, so when you do the assessments in threats and analysis, you're doing it on real-world terrorist groups and on real-world security questions and threats. So in the first term of that module, the threats and analysis module, students pick a terrorist group within a region, and then they are grouped with other students who are doing threat groups within that region, and they use that to do a group horizon scanning or scenario generating analysis. In the second term, when you do the national security sort of strategic level analysis in the threats and analysis module, we organize the groups to try and spread out talent and languages. So we don't we don't have certain students or certain groups with all native English speakers and certain groups without any native English speakers. We try and mix that up. And students we've picked out with a bit of leadership skill, we try to distribute them along so the groups all have a bit of drive behind them. So a bit of social engineering, but generally, the cohort is across the board quite strong. I've just come right from before this from a marking board, where the external examiner from another university noted how strong the work is, the written and briefing work is from all of our students, even those who are at the lower end of performance for the course, are still doing really good work. So quoted our external examiner. Okay, well, questions are coming thick and fast now. Okay, so Mujahid asks, what is the percentage of analysis on the course? Coming back to that, the whole course is about intelligence analysis and understanding how it happens and in what context, by whom, when, and how. How much of it is actually doing it? 30 to 40%. Do internships become available throughout the year of the course? Asked Joe. Yes. MS Risk pick up 3-4 students every year fairly early on in the year, and then they come through over the course of the year. I have semi-formal relations with most of the employers, so they come to me when internships open, but our students still have to compete for those jobs. So they come up, but the students still have to have the ability to qualify for those jobs. I hope that answers that, Joe. Next one from John, who's a U.S. citizen, significant banking experience, but no intelligence-related experience. Would he qualify for the distance program? Very likely, John. I'd have to see your CV, but if you're a professional in the banking industry, then I would say, as a qualified answer, probably. Let me see. I just might get the rest of the question here. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to have done Intel-related work, but it'll help, John, if that's the sort of field you're moving in or hoping to move in within the within your corporation or trade. Rachel asking, is coming straight from an undergraduate level in law likely to be an issue? No, Rachel, that's fine. We have, I think Catherine mentioned this, we've had, students with all sorts of backgrounds.
I was straight from undergrad.
So Catherine,
I graduated July, started in September. Didn't find it particularly, didn't feel like I wasn't at the same ability as a lot of the other students by being fresh from undergrad. Actually, when it came to things like essay writing, I found that I was a lot more comfortable with that side of it than a lot of other people who maybe have been in the professional world for 4 or 5 years. So it's strengths and weaknesses on kind of both sides, but I didn't find it inhibited me at all. So.
Yeah, I think we get very strong performance out of both people who are coming straight in from undergrad and those who are coming in from professional experience tend to excel at different points, but level out by the end of the course because they've been improved on the things they were weaker on. Because we will jump all over your weaknesses and make you improve. Let's see here. Yeah, and so it's just to add, Rachel, we've had students with undergrads in Egyptology and engineering and all sorts, languages and everything, and they'll all get on. So not a problem. Joe's back with another question. Considering a career change, what level of role can you expect at the end of the course? So, yeah, depends on your professional experience, Joe. That's kind of a how long is a piece of string question. The jobs that I just put a job in that was a former student is working for a major multinational that does security analysis. They've just given us a job on limited distribution for a Russian-speaking analyst. It's a starting job, but the sense from our former student is that it's going to turn into a healthy employment stream after that initial 12-month contract. A lot of companies will hire initially on a 12-month just to make sure you're useful, that you're worth the oxygen and the wage, and then they'll take you on more permanent jobs after. There are other jobs that pop up from time to time which are more senior. But senior depends, of course, on what kind of experience you have. So that comes back to the how long is the piece of string question. Seju, Korean, I believe I've spoken to you, Seju, hi. Asks if to join a private security company, do students need clearances? No. If you're trying to end up in government, then you'll need to go through a clearance procedure, which, depending on the level of clearance, is more or less time consuming and more or less invasive. But private companies will do their own vetting. I fairly routinely speak to employers checking the bona fides of their students. So no, you don't need it coming in. And if you're going to the private sector, no, you don't need it. If you're going into the public sector, whatever government you go work for and whatever organization within that government will do their own vetting. Giovanni, again, asks number of students on every year on average. No worries, Seiju. The answer is the residential course on campus is pretty solidly about 30 to 35 students, and the with 3 to 5 part-timers in each year on top of that. So yeah, but 30 to 35 on the residential. The distance learning first year had a half a dozen students. I'd expect about a dozen this year to make it about 18 over both years, all told. So this year, counting every student on every mode, we had 41 students. I expect that to be slightly higher this coming year. 30 to 40 is about, on the residential course, is about our optimal number. Certainly in terms of the amount of marking I have to do. I wouldn't want terribly much more than that. So we are pretty selective in who we pick. Right now, I think I've taken in 75 applicants for about 40 spots right now. Anyone else? No? Anyone? No? Ooh, how many books? No worries, Giovanni. We do a lot of online, so you use a lot of online sources, journal articles. Did you have to buy many books?
Maybe 2 books, because they were the ones I was using every single day. But the library's pretty good, and yeah, most of the stuff that you make us read or ask us to read is online.
Yeah.
Or available online. It's just like a couple of the foundation books that.
Which ones did you get?
Cure, I got, and I got kind of like almost like a textbook one that just had general information in it, but there was nothing for essays I had to particularly buy.
Okay, here we got some more questions coming in. Hi, Sune, my former undergrad student. Joe says, if you live in London, is it possible to live off campus and study? Yeah, absolutely. The university's got students coming in from all sorts. Teaching on the residential courses on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Some of your group work may require you to come in or at least dial in on Skype or phone on some other occasions. But as long as you can manage to get in on a Tuesday and a Thursday for 4 hours of lessons on each of those, plus usually another hour more of outside lectures or guest lectures, then yeah, living in town is fine. David again, computer programs. No, we'll hopefully coming this year I'll give students a primer on something called Multigo case file, but we'll teach you about that. No, as long as you're moderately competent on the main sort of office programs, then you should be all right. We'll teach you how to use analysis of competing hypothesis. Sune, what manner of languages would be beneficial to learn in seeking employment? Good one, Sune. My answer to that is open the international section of the Telegraph, read who the bad guys are, learn their languages. So Russian's a good one these days. Not saying anything to our Russian friends out there. Love you very much, you guys. But Russian's a good one. Arabic's always a good one. Chinese is a good one. Yeah, learn a language. French even will get you a lot of places. So if you're working in Africa, French gets you about half of it. If you can manage Swahili, you'll have about a little bit more of it, and Arabic covers North Africa. Catherine, you've got a question. What are you planning to do after you finish your MA?
Actually, I'm the contentious one. I'm not planning to go into intelligence analysis at all. I'm going into wartime corresponding.
Okay, bit of journalism.
Yeah, so basically just having the depth of knowledge about kind of wartime activity, intelligence, how intelligence agencies work, how governments work on a deeper level. For me, I think has been what drove me to do this course, and it's been great for that. So you don't even necessarily have to be wanting to go into intelligence, although obviously that would be kind of the best choice considering the content of the course.
We actually have last year's student who is a senior correspondent for the Austrian press agency. Have another student from a couple of years before that, a French woman who is a reporter for Agence France Presse. So actually there's been a number of journalists on the course, just as a matter of interest. Okay, John asks, do on-site students have advantages with companies over the distance students? Good one. I mean, the course material is the same. Is a distance learning program as rich as doing a campus program? I'm sure the university would expect me to say yes. I think realistically, no. Or else that's how we would do education across the board. You know, when you're in residence, you're getting a lot of learning other than just me talking. I think Catherine brought out a good point about students egging each other on and pushing each other. That certainly does happen on the DL program. After the residential week, the students were really working well together. But there's just that much less contact at time. Now, does that matter in hiring? I don't know. In part, I don't have the data because we've only run 1 year of the distance learning. But also the distance learning, most of the people that are on it are already employed. So it's a different cohort of people. I think if you've got the opportunity to take a year, do the residential course. If you're already in full-time employment, then I'd aim for the distance learning. David asks about consultation or tutoring, as we call it here. Each lecture has 2 hours every week set out for talking to students. But I think also Catherine made a point that all of us kind of run an open office policy, so I end up seeing students all the time. Right. Faisal asks, has anyone gone to work for MI6 after the course? Faisal, if they did, they wouldn't tell me. So I can't possibly answer that question. And anyone else? I think I've run to the end of a good run of questioning. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. Okay. One more. Chris Bradley asked one more. And Joe, you guys. Do students have do you have students that work full time and study part time? Yes. So if you want to do part time residential, you need day release. So you'll need that day of the week. So Tuesday in your first year, Thursday in your second year, off. It would be helpful if you then have a bit of flex from work to let you take the occasional extra day of leave to finish up your work. But we have a long history of 4 or 5 every year professionals. This year, in their first year, we've got an officer from Serious Organized Crimes Agency. We have an analyst from the Home Office, another Met Police counter-terror surveillance chap, an airport
drug enforcement.
Yeah, drug enforcement guy. So yes, we do that. You'll need the 1 day off a week for the 22 weeks of the residential block. So 11 weeks of days off from September through to Christmas, and then from Christmas through to end of March, beginning of April, and then after that, the first summer is generally relatively free. It will repeat in your second year. Then you've got to get your dissertation done by September the following, or March the March after you complete your residential leg. Chris asks, is your intelligence analysis teaching based on common international ways of thinking? Okay, so we tend to use a lot of UK models because and a lot of US models, because those are the 2 countries that actually release material. Now, Professor Davies and I both have been involved in writing UK intelligence doctrine. So, of course, you're going to get, to a good degree, UK stuff. But internationally, I mean, the structured analytic techniques were born in the CIA, and they are very universal. So the intelligence studies centers in the Baltic states, in Romania, in France, in Germany, certainly also I know from experience, because I've gone to teach there as well, the Norwegian intelligence staff, they all use these structured analytical tools. So while the lessons about UK organization are generally specific to the UK, you will have to do comparative work to other international organizations, so other intelligence organizations around the world. And then the structured analytical tools, they are applicable and are used everywhere. Okay, Ahmed is asking if doing 2 language programs at Brunel is too much. Probably. I'd stick with 1, mate. Don't put too much on your plate, because you're going to be drinking through a fire hose already for the year with the course material. Okay, last knockings. I'm going to give 10 seconds here for any more questions. Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much. Glad you found that informative, as some of you have said in your comments. So my email is there on the screen. Feel free to send me any questions if you can. Give me a couple days to answer before you freak out that I'm not answering. And hopefully, I know some of you have already have applied and been accepted on the course. Looking forward to seeing you in September or online, as the case may be. Thanks very much.